our next segment is a continuation of the situation that we saw in regions of southern India, Sri Lanka being one of them. Well, the damage caused by the fury of floods certainly goes beyond human life. There is an unprecedented outbreak of dengue fever in Sri Lanka. So far, more than 100,000 cases have been reported, and almost 300 people, in fact, have died from dengue this year alone. Colombo is the worst hit. More than 40% of the cases of dengue being reported in Sri Lanka are from the capital city. In fact, the World Health Organization says that the spike in cases comes in the wake of recent torrential rains and flooding. All right, we are on senior foreign editor Padma Rao now joins me live from the newsroom. Padma, just put things into perspective. We saw floods in Sri Lanka a couple of weeks ago. Authorities saying that this dengue outbreak could perhaps be a result of that, and more likely so. But the present situation is really deteriorating from the reports that we're reading from Sri Lanka.
You're absolutely right. There were the worst floods in, so many decades, and also the worst rainfall that Sri Lanka faced in the recent past, Sana. However, having said that, Sri Lanka is a country with a lot of precipitation. There is rainfall almost through the year because it receives both the monsoons, much like South India does. So this in itself, if there were to be epidemics, there would have been many, many more before. Let's not also forget the tsunami. After the tsunami, there was even greater devastation, but there was no epidemic. Now, I have a slightly different theory because I do know that the Western province, which is where Colombo, the capital, is located, has been at the receiving end of a lot of, in fact, unprecedented development. Most of it is vertical development, it's concrete structures. Let's not forget that the Chinese development in Colombo and the Western province is aimed at making Sri Lanka, quote-unquote, the Hong Kong of South Asia. So, and as we know, even from New Delhi and from metropolises in India, wherever there are a lot of buildings coming up, there is a lot of what we call malba, scrap from construction, and, lying around. Now,
right.
This is perhaps the case in why there is a dengue epidemic, why it's particularly bad in the Western province in Colombo. Now, also with urbanization, growing urbanization, comes naturally a rise in population as more and more rural people migrate to the cities. That again has been pointed out by the Federation of Red Cross in Sri Lanka, that they said that this has to do with population density as well. So these are two factors which might be linked with Sri Lanka's dream, which is being rather cruelly cut short of being the Hong Kong of South Asia. I say this with no smugness. I say this with a lot of distress because Sri Lanka has been a traditionally very clean society.
Right.
There's never been garbage piling up and mounting, in urban metropolises as is elsewhere the case.
I got to that point, Padma, but, according to reports, the last major dengue outbreak was only back in 2009, which reported 25,000 or so infections, but 249 people dead that year when in the dengue outbreak. We're also reading reports how hospitals are at their break point. Give us a sense of the kind of administration, the readiness as far as the island nation goes in case of an outbreak of this magnitude. Are they equipped to handle it?
Absolutely. If there is any nation that is equipped, let's not forget that it is Sri Lanka that was not so many years ago declared the first South Asian country to be completely malaria-free by the World Health Organization. So that is also a mosquito-related, a vector-borne disease, and that is not an easy achievement given the kind of tropical climate that exists in Sri Lanka and much of South India. Now, you mentioned 2009, Sana. I'd like to point out that in 2009, Sri Lanka was in the throes of the end of the war. This lasted from December 2008 to May 2009. This was the fiercest period of fighting, and all attention was diverted towards the northeast of Sri Lanka, where the tigers, the liberation tigers, were being defeated and chased out of the country. So a certain amount of that laxity could be attributed perhaps just to the distraction by the war. But
right.
Having said that, think of how many years have lapsed between 2009 and today, and all the things that have happened in between. There's been unprecedented development, especially especially in the north and northeast, but also increasingly in the western province where Colombo is, specifically at the hands of international donors, international investors, and mostly coming from China. Now, this is, I was in Germany recently to cover the Hamburg summit exclusively for WION, as you know, and I was surprised to find mosquitoes in Hamburg, a temperate city of all the places. And when I inquired, I was told that this was a common phenomenon now in Germany because many of these mosquitoes arrived on ships. Colombo is a port. So if you put those factors together, it's distressing but not very surprising that this epidemic is taking place in Sri Lanka now.
All right, Padma, we'll leave it at that. Thanks so much for joining us there with inputs from your end. We, of course, will be keeping a very close eye on the developments in Sri Lanka as far as the outbreak of dengue is concerned. Well,